all of our cities and communities should be safe. It doesn't matter whether the communities are led by Democratic or Republican governors or mayors. And as Senator Whitehouse pointed out, there are high crime rates and places where led by Republicans. So all this focus on somehow it's the Democratic-led cities that are more crime-ridden is just full of you know what. And I think we need to get off this kind of politicization of the safety of our cities. Let's just pay attention to what we can do to make sure that our cities are safe. And that means funding the police in appropriate ways. And if I hear one more time that all we Democrats want to defund the police, it's like, you know what? Do you not even listen to any of us who say that is not our position? I mean, is there any understanding of the fact that we are not all in that boat? My gosh. You know, it's just really, the word ridiculous comes to mind when people are yelling and screaming about positions that we are not even taking. And as long as we are looking at facts, why don't we? Why don't we look at facts? Why don't we look at how we can truly prevent crime, how we need to train our police? We need to have, I would say, community policing is a good way for our people to trust our police officers, to have a relationship with them. Those are all good things to support. But unfortunately, we have a regime that, for example, the Department of Justice canceled over $800 million in public safety grants, including $100 million in grants for violence prevention. Now, this is the administration that wants to prevent violence, that wants to send National Guard to cities that they politically determine is violence-ridden. Not true, and yet they are making these kinds of cuts. See, the inconsistency is awesome. I have a question for General Enyart. Now, I mentioned that this regime is politicizing our military by sending the National Guard to various cities. And I happen to be the ranking member of the Senate Armed Services Readiness Subcommittee, and I am deeply concerned about the impact of domestic military deployments on force readiness. And every additional deployment has a cascading effort on other missions and limits training opportunities. So for you, General, what impact would you expect on the National Guard's readiness as thousands of troops are deployed around the country for domestic policing? General?
Thank you, Senator. As you point out, every day that a guardsman is deployed in the streets of Los Angeles or Chicago or Washington, D.C., is a day that is not spent doing the training that they need to do in order to keep up their military skills, in order to maintain those military skills. If a National Guardsman is walking around Washington, D.C., as I saw 4 of them walking around last night, or they're picking up trash, or they're spreading compost, those are not military tasks. Those are not the tasks that they need to be trained for in order to defend our nation. And it has a very adverse impact on readiness, as well as an adverse impact on morale, which will directly affect recruiting and retention.
It would be really nice if people could acknowledge that the National Guard has a mission, and it is not to go into cities where, especially where they're not requested to do so, to do policing, and that would have a negative impact, I would think, on their morale. Wouldn't you agree, General?
That is correct. Not only on the soldiers' morale, but let's look at the families. You know, the families are losing their loved one to go off somewhere and stand around taking selfies in front of the Washington Monument. That's not what guardsmen do. It's also an adverse impact on employers, which will directly impact recruiting in the future.
I'm running out of time, but I did want to ask Mr. Jackson, as I came in just as you were getting yelled at by one of my colleagues, but as I mentioned, this regime has cut large amounts in grants that I think would go toward safer communities. So based on your experience with evidence-based community violence intervention, what do you expect to be the impact of these cuts by the Trump regime?
I mean, unfortunately, we know it's going to impact our ability to prevent violence before it happens. When we talk about the historic reductions we're seeing across the country, it's a direct result of investing in violence prevention efforts, but also holding those accountable that are bringing guns into our communities. And both of those are under siege. ATF is being defunded. Victim services have lost $1 billion. Community violence intervention has lost $812 million. Mental health resources has lost $1 billion. So this administration has cut tremendous dollars on both ends, law enforcement and investing in prevention.
And I think there's a direct correlation between violent crime in our communities and very strict gun legislation, gun laws. And Hawaii has one of the lowest violent crime rates because we have very strong gun laws that protect our community. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.